Hi everyone, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we'll be exploring the Epic Battle of Alesia, designed by Grant Wiley and published by Worthington Publishing. This two-player Hex Encounters wargame reimagines the 1976 Avalon Hill game covering the same battle, and focuses on the culminating battle in the Gallic Wars in 52 BC between the Roman Empire and the United Gallic tribes, which were incidentally led by this man right off to my left, Vercingetorix. Alesia was a fascinating battle of both siege and counter-siege. After a series of back-and-forth engagements between the Roman forces of Julius Caesar and the United Gallic tribes under the command of Vercingetorix, the Roman forces had trapped the Gallic forces in the fortified settlement of Alesia, which is in modern-day central France. The Gauls had an estimated 30,000 to 50,000 warriors, while the besieging Romans had about 50,000 men as well. Complicating the matter for the Romans, however, is a relief force of 70,000 to 150,000 Gauls who subsequently encircled the Roman besieging forces. Trapped on both sides, Julius Caesar built a massive series of fortifications facing both the settlement of Alesia and the relief force. Eventually, Caesar won the day and essentially ended the Gallic revolts. In this game, you take either the Gauls or the Romans in this fascinating ancient double encirclement. Let's do a big picture overview of Alesia as we start out. Alesia is designed for 2 players, but there are options for 3 and 4 players, and in particular, the 3-player option looks like it would work quite well. Gameplay is listed as 2 to 4 hours, but to be honest, I wonder about this a bit. The shorter durations are more likely when Vercingetorix is able to escape Alesia, or if the Romans are able to kill him. The longer duration games would be more common if the game goes its full turn limit. If the game does go its full limit, it'd be 24 turns, divided up into 2 12-turn assaults. And with so many counters on the map, I think it'd take a fair bit longer than 4 hours. Each 12-turn assault represents 1 day in historical length, so the historical length of the game is 2 days. Unit scale isn't stated, but there are 144 Roman counters. Just doing some paper napkin math, that turns out to be about 350 men per counter. Let's go over some of the core gameplay features of Alesia. First up, while this isn't a monster game, it is a big game. The map is 34 inches by 44 inches. There are almost 400 counters, and almost all of them are gameplay units. So the scope and scale here is large. Now also, while it is a big game, it's important to note that it's not a complex game. The rulebook is only 12 pages, so in many ways this is an accessible game with a gameplay-friendly learning load. The design roots of the game lie in the 1976 classic game Caesar, Epic Battle of Alesia from Avalon Hill, and in that regard you can sense the traditional throwback feel to the game with its functional rule set and straightforward Hex Encounters gameplay. The game also follows a somewhat traditional turn-based sequence of play, where the Gauls move and attack, followed by the Romans moving and attacking. There are a few other steps to the process, but that's the essence of it. And a lot of the traditional elements of Hex Encounters gameplay are in Alesia. We've got zones of control, odds-based combat, and retreats and advances. And the streamlined nature of play means that it's interesting to note what features aren't in the game. Things like supply, a detailed morale system, and unit facing, for example, aren't here. I don't mean this as a criticism, just pointing out that this is a large Hex Encounters game that is focused on keeping things moving in a very classic gameplay sense. There are a number of features that shine in this game. The siege-based gameplay with forts, walls, defensive works, and camps gives the game a very unique feel. I'm curious to see how these defensive systems work to influence gameplay. Also, there are essentially 3 forces in play here. On one hand, you've got the Romans, but they're essentially trapped between 2 different Gallic forces. The Gauls trapped in the settlement of Alesia, and the large relief force trying to break them out. I feel like the tactical maneuvering to try to break out as the Gauls and to prevent that from happening as the Romans should be quite interesting, with lots of different strategies to try. Combat in the game is essentially 2 different types. There's shock combat and missile fire. The Romans in particular can use their 20+ forts to rain missiles down on the Gauls from up to 3 hexes away. There are a number of different types of units in the game. Roman legionnaires, cavalry, Numidian allies of Rome. For the Gauls, they have cavalry and a wide variety of allies. Having said that, while Roman forces have strong ranged fire capacities, functionally most units have a basic strength and a basic movement, and little in the way of unique characteristics that will make them fight differently. Leaders are in play as well. The Roman leaders convey bonuses, and the Gallic leader, Vercingetorix, is the key to winning the game for both sides. The Gauls are trying to get him off the map to win, and the Romans are trying to capture or kill him. Gameplay is broken into two 12-turn days, and at the end of the first day, there's a resetting of troops, almost like a halftime in a sporting match. During this time, each side regains 10% of their forces as replacements, and there is a reorganization of the forces on the map. Lastly, we'll talk more about this as we look at the components, but there is a significant aspect of gameplay that involves hidden information. The Gallic player decides where relief forces will enter the map, and keeps that information hidden throughout the game from the Roman player through the use of a player screen. The game comes with two identical rulebooks, one for each player, which is always an appreciated touch, and let's take a look at one of them, which weighs in at a very modest 12 pages. Now, I believe for the most part, they've kept the original streamlined gameplay rules of the classic original game, but refined some areas and clarified others. Again, one can sense the classic old school roots of this game as you look at the rule set, but it's great to see that they've improved on the originals. Now, I've read through the rules and I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on how to play, but as always, the test comes when you get things to the table. Complexity-wise, I feel like this is a 3 out of 10. The game really focuses on essential mechanics, and there's very little chrome or extra elements that get in the way of the core gameplay. I'm not sure if I'd say this is a beginner-friendly game because of its size, but complexity-wise, there should be little to scare anyone away. For a solitaire rating, I'm going to go with a 4 out of 10. The hidden approach routes for the Gauls would make a challenge for the solitaire player. You'd have to kind of figure a workaround for that, but as that aside, everything else should play pretty well for playing both sides to the best of your ability. Now, scenario-wise, there's the one scenario and there's no optional rules. Having said that, I do think the game will have good replay value, as there are likely a lot of different approaches that the player can take with either side. Here are the 396 counters of Alesia. They come on 4 double-sided sheets, and almost all of these are military units. There are only a handful of unit markers down here on this 4th sheet. Now, these are big, thick counters with good heft to them, all at 3/4 inch size for easy handling, and all pre-rounded, so no counter clippers needed. Now, looking through these, we can see a variety of units in the game, although the main differences are in combat strengths rather than the large amount of functional differences. Now, the red units here, these are the Roman units. The Gallic forces have 2 different colors. The blue counters here are the ones trapped in the Alesia settlement, and then the large green counters here are the relief force. Now, the back side of the Gallic units have their combat strengths and movement missing, as this represents their disrupted state, whereas the backside of the Roman units are identical, except for the missile-capable Roman units, which have a P on the front, designating that they are missile-capable, and if they are flipped over, they no longer have that capacity. Now, if we take a look at one of these counters, let's take a look at this Roman Legion, for example, we can see how straightforward the values are. The top right is the unit's strength points, and the bottom right is its movement points. That is about as straightforward as it gets. There are 4 player aids in the game. 2 of them are identical core player aids, 1 for each player on a thin cardstock. And now this player has the combat results tables and the terrain effects chart. As we look at the class main shock combat results table, we can see the odds-based nature here of combat and the very straightforward combat results. The second player aid is the paper player mat for the Alesian player to hide the arrival zones of the relief force units. Now, there are rules and guidance in the game on how to do this, but basically the map is keyed with zones representing these Roman numerals, and the Alesian player stacks the relief forces on these holding boxes until the turn they can be released into the game. Now, the interesting part for me is that the turn record track here is also on this aid, which means that the Roman player will have to ask the Gallic player what turn it is or just keep track of it mentally, because this sheet is something that the Roman player can't look at during the game. Which brings us directly to the last player aid, the player screen for the Gallic player to hide the previous gameplay mat so that the Roman player won't know the Gallic relief forces are coming into play. This hidden element is probably the biggest thing to solve for if you're playing solo, and a sweet element of the 2-player game mode. Where will the Gallic relief forces show up? Time to explore the big map here. Now, this is 2 Thickly mounted 22-inch by 34-inch sections, butted together to make up the 44-inch by 34-inch map for Alesia. Now, as someone who finds siege warfare elements fascinating, these Roman fortifications here and forts to defend themselves from both the besieged Gauls in the middle and then in the settlement, and then from the relief force, this is just really fascinating. And these walls are likely the key to the Roman defense system because the Romans really don't know where the Gallic relief forces are going to show up. They're going to need to be mobile, and Roman units moving along these walls here can move twice as fast as they can on regular terrain. So it seems like using these walls quickly to move to react to threats must be a key tactic for the Romans. The Romans also get to tactically place more than 20 forts on this map, and where you build them as the Romans feels crucial to success. This is one aspect of the game that I think will add to replayability, as the Roman player will likely learn over time where the strong fort locations are. Now, I like this map quite a bit. It's straightforward and clear, and I'm just drooling to see how this unique battle plays out. I mean, a double siege is very, very rare. I also appreciate the big 1-inch hexes, which should make handling units nice and easy. Now, as we're looking at some close-ups here of the map, this is probably a good time to talk about stacking too. The Romans can stack 3 units in a hex, and the Gauls can stack 2, so this game should have a pretty easy visual footprint to work with. Victory in the game can be accomplished in a few ways. As the Gauls, you win immediately if you can exit Vercingetorix off the map. You've got to get him out of the settlement and then off the map edge going through the Roman forces. As the Romans, you win if you kill or capture Vercingetorix at any point. Failing that, if the battle runs its full 24 turns without an immediate victory, the Romans win. So there we have it, Alesia from Worthington Publishing, a reimagined, updated, and improved, fresh new design of Avalon Hill's Caesar, Epic Battle of Alesia. It's great to see these classics being brought back into the modern era with a fresh look and cleaned up rules. Let me know what you think about this one, and if you liked this game overview, you might also enjoy this gameplay video of Gettysburg, A Time for Heroes, another low-medium complexity wargame from Worthington Publishing.